What if some of the greatest British war films ever made are sitting online right now waiting for you to rediscover them? Imagine tales of courage and fear told in the grainy light of history. These aren't the usual classroom reels. These are hidden masterpieces that vanished from memory but never lost their fire. Let's uncover 12 free British war films you can stream this week before they disappear again. Number 12. The Cruel Sea, 1953. When The Cruel Sea first hit theaters, it didn't just show war, it made audiences feel it. This was not a glory picture. It was saltwater, steel, and silence. Based on Nicholas Montserrat's novel, it follows a Royal Navy corvette crew fighting U-boats across the North Atlantic. The tone was grimly real. The sea itself became the enemy. The film was daring for its time. It refused to paint heroism in bright colors. Captain Erickson, played by Jack Hawkins, made hard choices that haunted him. He once orders depth charges dropped even though he knows survivors might be in the water. That moment burned through the nation's conscience. Some critics thought it was too bleak. The Admiralty reportedly worried it might hurt morale in the post-war years. The production itself battled harsh seas and malfunctioning models. Crews spent weeks soaked in cold water tanks to capture that sense of exhaustion and endless fear. Yet, when it premiered, the film stunned viewers. Veterans said it was the only movie that felt true. It didn't cheer war, it endured it. Over time, The Cruel Sea faded from casual discussion, but sailors kept it close like an old wound they couldn't forget. Today, its honesty feels prophetic. It predicted the quiet disillusionment that would shadow Britain for decades. The sea never forgives, and neither does memory. Number 11. Ice Cold in Alex, 1958. At first glance, Ice Cold in Alex looked like a simple desert survival story. But beneath the sand and sweat, it became one of the most human war films ever made. The movie follows a British ambulance crew retreating across North Africa, pursued by the enemy and haunted by thirst. The journey is brutal. The heat is endless. The famous scene where they finally reach Alexandria and savor a glass of beer remains one of cinema's most emotional payoffs. But few remember the controversy. During production, the army objected to its portrayal of exhaustion and fear. Soldiers were shown breaking down, not standing tall. The Ministry of Defense nearly withdrew its cooperation, claiming it could harm recruitment efforts. The shoot itself mirrored the plot's torment. Actors John Mills and Sylvia Sims endured real desert storms and collapsing vehicles. The crew ran out of water more than once. By the end, they were living the film's reality. Audiences were divided. Some hailed it as genius. Others said it was too weary, too unpatriotic. But decades later, it became a cult favorite among those who saw in it something deeper than victory. It was about endurance and faith in survival, not in flags. Today, Ice Cold in Alex stands as a monument to courage stripped of glamour. It whispers that heroism often comes with trembling hands. Number 10. The One That Got Away, 1957. A British war film that secretly made audiences root for the enemy. The One That Got Away told the true story of Luftwaffe pilot Franz von Vera, the only German POW to escape from British captivity. The irony was deliberate and shocking. In the Cold War years, it seemed almost subversive. The film showed von Vera as daring, charismatic, and oddly likable. He defied every British guard and escaped not once but multiple times. Critics accused the filmmakers of glorifying a Nazi. The government was uneasy. Some cinemas refused to screen it in small towns. Behind the scenes, the crew faced its own struggles. They shot in the exact prison locations where real POWs had stayed, which caused tension with locals who remembered those days vividly. Hardy Kruger, who played von Vera, was himself a former German soldier. He received anonymous hate mail from both sides of the channel, yet the film survived the outrage. Viewers found themselves conflicted. It was a story about freedom, not ideology. It dared to humanize the so-called enemy. That boldness made it unforgettable. In later years, historians praised its balance and restraint. It remains one of Britain's most unusual wartime films, a story of courage without borders, proof that the human will to escape is universal. Number 9. The Hill, 1965. When The Hill arrived, it shook the foundations of British war cinema. It wasn't about battles or bombs. It was about brutality behind barbed wire. Directed by Sidney Lumet, this film turned its gaze inward to a British military prison in the North African desert. Sean Connery had just risen to fame as James Bond, but here he stripped away the glamour and played a man broken by authority. The film's premise is simple but suffocating. Soldiers accused of cowardice or misconduct are punished by climbing an artificial sandhill under the blazing sun until their minds collapse. There are no heroes, only victims and oppressors, trading places under the weight of command. Every footstep on that sand feels like a scream. But controversy hit fast. The British Army condemned it as anti-military propaganda. The BBC refused to air it for years, claiming it undermined discipline. Newspapers called it nihilistic and unpatriotic. Even Sean Connery's agents begged him to withdraw, fearing it would ruin his clean image. Lumet refused to soften the tone. He filmed in the real heat of Spain, pushing actors to exhaustion. Connery fainted twice. When it finally premiered, critics were split. Some hailed it as a masterpiece of moral confrontation. Others saw it as an act of betrayal against Britain's wartime myth. Yet in time, The Hill became a cult legend among soldiers and cinephiles. It revealed a truth too harsh for the 1960s, that sometimes war's cruelest battles happen long after the guns go silent. It endures as a reminder that courage without compassion can turn any army into a machine of torment. Number 8. Went the Day Well, 1942. Produced in the darkest days of the Second World War, Went the Day Well was part propaganda, part prophecy. At first, it looked like a simple warning, a peaceful English village infiltrated by disguised German soldiers. But what began as fiction soon felt too close to home. The tone was shocking for its time. Civilians didn't just hide, they fought back. Grandmothers used axes, schoolboys fired rifles. The message was clear. The enemy could already be here, yet the realism disturbed even government censors. There were debates inside the Ministry of Information over whether showing villagers killing invaders might traumatize the public. Director Alberto Cavalcanti pushed ahead, ignoring officials who wanted a softer version. He filmed it with eerie calm, turning quiet countryside scenes into moments of dread. Every hedgerow felt like a trap, every smile like a lie. Some scenes of violence were so sudden that audiences gasped in shock. After release, it became both beloved and feared. The military used it in briefings, while moralists demanded it be banned for glorifying vigilantism. For decades, it vanished from television schedules, resurfacing only in late-night screenings where younger audiences called it revolutionary. Today, Went the Day Well feels eerily modern. It predicted an age of hidden threats and community resistance. Beneath its patriotic veneer lies a chilling thought. That war can make anyone capable of anything. Number 7. The Wooden Horse, 1950. Before The Great Escape, there was The Wooden Horse, the film that inspired it all. Based on an astonishing true story, it told of British POWs who built a gymnastics vaulting horse to hide their tunnel entrance beneath it. Each day, they performed exercise routines while digging toward freedom. The simplicity of the scheme became its genius. Audiences adored its quiet tension. No explosions, no chase scenes, just patience and fear. But behind the camera, the production was as difficult as the escape itself. The British government hesitated to approve the story, fearing it might inspire similar tactics during ongoing conflicts. There were even rumors of certain ex-prisoners being pressured not to reveal classified details. Filming inside an old airbase, the crew battled freezing nights and collapsing tunnels. Actors fainted under the lamps. Dust filled their lungs. Yet the realism gave it power. When it premiered, critics called it a triumph of restraint. American studios later tried to buy the rights but were refused. They eventually borrowed its concept for The Great Escape, without credit sparking quiet resentment in British film circles. Over the years, The Wooden Horse slipped into obscurity, overshadowed by louder Hollywood imitations. But watch it now and its brilliance returns. Every creak of that wooden shell, every whispered footstep, is pure suspense, born from truth. It remains a testament to how courage hides in silence, not spectacle. Number 6. The Dam Busters, 1955. When the Dam Busters exploded onto the British screen, it became more than a movie. It became national mythology. The story of Operation Chastise, the daring RAF mission to destroy German dams with Barnes-Wallace's bouncing bomb, captured Britain's pride at its most fragile moment. But beneath the thunder of engines and the gleam of heroism lies a darker tale of politics, obsession, and loss. Released less than a decade after the war, it was hailed as a patriotic epic, yet its realism unsettled many. It didn't glorify battle. It showed brave men risking everything in a mission where most never returned. Richard Todd played Wing Commander Guy Gibson as both fearless and haunted a man chasing perfection while knowing he was sentencing friends to die. Controversy followed quickly. Government censors debated cutting scenes of civilian casualties after the dam breaches, fearing public backlash. Others accused the film of triumphalism. Even Barnes-Wallace himself reportedly wept after seeing it, saying he wished he had never invented the weapon. The movie became both tribute and confession. Production was grueling. The crew used real Lancaster bombers and rebuilt full-scale models of the dams. Each explosion had to be captured in one take. Actors endured deafening noise and freezing night shoots over water. The Ministry of Defense provided limited support, forcing the filmmakers to improvise with minimal resources. When it premiered, it became Britain's highest-grossing film of the decade, but the shadow of truth remained. Many of the men it depicted were already dead, and their families watched in silence as their sacrifice played back in flickering light. Decades later, George Lucas cited The Dam Busters as a key inspiration for Star Wars' Death Star trench run. Ironically, a film about war's futility helped shape modern cinematic heroism. Yet the heart of The Dam Busters still beats quietly, reminding viewers that victory often costs more than defeat. Number 5. Tunes of Glory, 1960. Few war films dared to show what happens when soldiers come home and still cannot stop fighting. Tunes of Glory did. Starring Alec Guinness and John Mills, this psychological drama unfolds within the cold stone walls of a Highland regiment after the war has ended. But inside those halls, the war continues not with guns, but with pride and guilt. Guinness plays Jock Sinclair, a rough-tempered major who climbed the ranks through sheer will during battle. When peace arrives, he finds himself replaced by a by-the-book officer, Colonel Barrow, played by Mills. Their clash is volcanic. Two survivors of trauma, each unable to adapt to peace. The film's themes of mental strain and hierarchy challenged Britain's post-war image. Critics accused it of dishonoring the military. Some army officers reportedly boycotted its early screenings, saying it portrayed leadership as madness. But the truth it told was too sharp to ignore. It showed that even heroes can be undone by the silence that follows victory. Behind the scenes, tension mirrored fiction. Guinness and Mills had real creative disagreements. The director Ronald Neame pushed both to emotional limits, demanding repeated takes of their final confrontation until they were genuinely shaken. Neame later admitted that by the end, both actors were near breakdown, but that exhaustion gave the film its authenticity. When released, audiences were unprepared. It wasn't about war's glory, but its residue. The gray rooms, the bagpipes echoing in emptiness. Over time, critics reappraised it, calling it one of the most mature British dramas ever filmed. Today, Tunes of Glory stands as a haunting hymn for soldiers who won battles yet lost themselves. It proved that war doesn't end when the fighting stops. It ends when the soul finally surrenders. Number 4. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. At first glance, the bridge on the River Kwai seemed like a triumph of British discipline and craftsmanship, but beneath its grandeur lies one of cinema's most bitter ironies. Directed by David Lean and starring Alec Guinness, it told the story of British POWs, forced by the Japanese army to build a bridge that would aid their own enemy. Audiences saw a tale of pride and defiance, but the film's moral undercurrent was devastating. Colonel Nicholson's obsession with order leads him to collaborate with captors, turning survival into madness. That complexity outraged many veterans, who called it a distortion of real suffering. Newspapers accused Lean of glamorizing betrayal. The production was as punishing as the story. Filmed in the jungles of Ceylon under searing heat, crew members collapsed daily. Guinness was bitten by leeches. The bridge itself, a massive practical set, had to be rebuilt multiple times after flooding. Lean was notorious for perfectionism, forcing hundreds of takes until every movement aligned like a symphony of despair. Censors debated its ending, where the bridge is destroyed in a tragic explosion. Some wanted a clear patriotic message, but Lean insisted on moral ambiguity. That choice turned the film from a war adventure into an existential statement about obsession and futility. When it premiered, it won 7 Academy Awards, but in Britain, the reaction was conflicted. Veterans still refused to watch it, claiming it insulted their memory. Over the years, however, it became a classic, a study of power pride and the thin line between duty and delusion. Today, the bridge on the River Kwai feels timeless. It reminds viewers that even heroes can build their own prisons, and sometimes the bridge to victory is the same one that leads to ruin. Number 3. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. When A Bridge Too Far stormed cinemas, it was hailed as one of the most ambitious war epics ever made. Directed by Richard Attenborough and packed with an all-star cast, including Sean Connery, Anthony Hopkins, and Michael Caine, it recreated Operation Market Garden, the Allied assault on Nazi-occupied Holland. But its ambition came with chaos, scandal, and heartbreak. The film was enormous in every sense: hundreds of tanks, thousands of extras, and real paratroopers dropping from the sky turned sets into battlefields. The story followed British and American troops attempting to seize key bridges across the Rhine and end the war by Christmas. But the mission failed, and so did the illusion of invincibility. From the start, controversy surrounded it. The British government offered no official support, fearing the film exposed one of the country's most embarrassing defeats. Critics accused it of anti-military sentiment, while survivors of the actual battle wept, watching their doomed courage replayed on screen. Attenborough faced threats and outrage, yet refused to sanitize history. Filming in the Netherlands tested everyone. Actors trudged through swamps for weeks. Caine's tank scenes were shot under freezing rain. Connery reportedly clashed with producers over the historical accuracy of his dialogue. The Dutch authorities almost shut down production after locals protested the disruption. When released, reactions were split. Some praised its honesty. Others called it an overblown failure. But time has been kind. Today, A Bridge Too Far is viewed as a monumental achievement, a tragic poem about hubris and heroism. It captures the futility of perfect plans in the chaos of war. The bridge still stands as a ghostly monument to dreams that reach too far. Number 2. The Longest Day, 1962. Before digital effects, before blockbuster budgets, there was The Longest Day, a film so massive it required 3 directors and multiple languages. It told the story of D-Day from every angle. Allied troops storming Normandy, German officers panicking behind lines, French resistance fighters risking everything. It was war told with terrifying precision. Made only 17 years after the invasion, it was both tribute and reconstruction. Yet even as veterans praised its realism, political tension brewed beneath its polished surface. American studios controlled much of the financing, and British critics accused them of rewriting history to favor American heroism. Several British veterans groups demanded scenes be reshot to show the full extent of British sacrifice. Behind the camera, the chaos rivaled the real invasion. Thousands of soldiers from multiple armies were hired as extras. Entire French villages were rebuilt only to be destroyed again. Weather ruined shooting schedules. Sean Connery, who appeared just before becoming Bond, called it the hardest job of his life. The film's realism shocked audiences. No triumphant music, just explosions, screams, and smoke. Some governments even banned it temporarily, claiming it was too violent for post-war audiences, still recovering from trauma. Yet its starkness became its strength. When it premiered, it dominated global box offices and won Academy Awards, but its truest victory was moral. It showed that war could be both heroic and horrific at once. Every step onto that beach was filmed with reverence for those who never walked back. Today, The Longest Day remains a lesson in collective storytelling. No single nation wins alone. Every victory is written in shared blood and silence. Number 1. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, 1943. Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger dared to do the unthinkable. In the middle of the Second World War, they made a film that questioned the entire idea of British honor. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp was banned by Winston Churchill himself. He feared it would destroy morale, but decades later, it became one of the most profound anti-war statements ever filmed. It follows the life of Clive Candy, a patriotic British officer whose sense of decency becomes his downfall. Through 3 wars, he grows older, but never wiser, still believing in fair play, even as the world turns ruthless. His friendship with a German officer blurs the lines between enemy and ally. The film was revolutionary in its sympathy and tragic in its foresight. Censors hated it. Churchill's office tried to seize the negatives. The War Office denied access to uniforms and military equipment, forcing Powell and Pressburger to design their own. Actors faced harassment for taking part. Deborah Kerr played 3 roles because no other actresses would risk joining the project. The film's release was chaotic. Some theaters refused to screen it. Critics dismissed it as treasonous. But time revealed its brilliance. It wasn't anti-British, it was anti-arrogance. It showed that victory without empathy becomes hollow. Years later, Martin Scorsese called it one of the greatest films ever made and helped restore it for modern audiences. Watching it today feels like reading a letter written by a nation to its own conscience. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp remains Britain's bravest war film, not for its battles, but for its honesty. It dares to say what few dared then and what few dare now, that the greatest enemy is not the other side. It is forgetting what makes you human. War films aren't just entertainment. They are mirrors held up to courage, guilt, and time. These 12 British masterpieces remind us that heroism isn't loud, it's lonely. They are free to watch, but priceless to feel. So which one will you stream first tonight? Like, subscribe, and tell us which forgotten story hit you the hardest.